Second part of why I also disagree with what the statement the Honorable Minister had made is this. We need to take into consideration a lot of things here. You know, I feel like why a lot of resettlement farmers and why a lot of black farmers fail is not because that we are incompetent or we can't do things. It's the lack of information. It's the lack of information that most of our white counterparts received. It's the lack of education that most of our white counterparts had received, and it's the lack of being exposed to these things. Talking on lack of information and education on this situation is that most of this white our white counterparts, white farmers, have been farming commercially since they were 5 years old. So this guy has watched his grandfather. Okay, let's say his father watched his great grandfather, and his grandfather watched his great grandfather farming and doing these things and learned from them through that shared experience. And what they do is that they continue sharing this experience with each other. That this knowledge of how to farm, in particular if they're in drought-stricken areas, that they perform extremely well, is something that they have been taught since they were very young. A lot of us were taught farming in our traditional method of farming, running a large herd of cattle and so forth, that when we move into these resettlement farms, sometimes the lack of information, the lack of education, which we are supposed to receive, the lack of training, does show itself that we start making amateur mistakes on these farms. Rather than better managing our grazing, we don't do that. Rather than better managing our livestock, we don't do that. We overgraze our farms. We don't take into consideration the carrying capacity, the rain, and so forth. So it's a lot of these things. The lack of being exposed to this information, being exposed to this training, which I see the ministry and also Agribank are starting now to host. Back in the day, they didn't do this. People were receiving resettlement farms, and people didn't know where to go from here, or what to do with them. And that's why we have a lot of the situations of most of the resettlement farms and most communal areas are in dire, disastrous, dire or disastrous ways they look today. Another thing was also lack of financial incentives, lack of money. I wrote this in one of the posts where I said, if you want a lot of commercial resettled farmers to farm like our counterparts, make finances, resources available to them for them to be able to do this. Because agriculture, just like any other business, is a business that's there to make money. And for it to make money, it needs money. You're giving someone a resettlement farm who does not have any financial incentive or any financial buying capital behind him, and you're expecting him to run and manage and maintain a farm that everything on this farm is modern day infrastructure that requires you, when the fence breaks, you need to go buy new fences and put that on. And when those finances are not available, it's quite difficult. Debushing an entire camp, fine, you can do it the labor intensive way of hiring people to chop. But as I said, if you get workers to do that, you need to pay them. Now, nothing is done for free. So that's where it becomes a bit difficult. If I do not have that money to do this, it becomes problematic. I see now that Agribank is starting to toe the line and it's creating soft loans and so forth, which were actually called for at the land conference, that these things need to be done, because back in the day, most of those, not most, but let me say some, not all, but some or most of them received this sort of loans from their government, and they received government support. This is why these guys were able to build successful Brahman, Simmental, or whatever, vegetable farming, horticulture. They were successful in doing this because they received these incentives and this support from the government of the day. And that's what a lot of black communal and commercial farmers need. We don't just need land be given. We need proper assistance and guidance. And of course, the financial resource needs to be there to help us to be able to invest the money. If it's buying a tractor, for us to buy a tractor to be able to plow land so we can plant buffalo grass or plant our own lucerne. If not that, money for us to be able to pay people to come and debush our camps and spray the poison to kill the acacia thorn bush. But because these things are not available, it becomes extremely difficult. Just like with any other business, if you try to run a business and you don't have any money, you're going to find it very hard. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to fail at it because it needs money. For it to make money, it needs money in it. And then last, there's also been a situation whereby the Ministry of Lands and Resettlement NLR, I have been very critical about them, is the fact that they resettle people on these farms. They firstly don't give any training. They've only started doing it now. They don't give any financial incentives. They only started doing it now. They don't come back and inspect these farms. They don't come and do a progress report on these farms. That's where they fail. That's how they fail. They fail us and we fail ourselves. So how are we supposed to farm like commercial farmers? Like commercial white farmers. Most of these commercial white farmers know that if he doesn't make ends meet for this month or this year, he's got to pay the bank back. And if he doesn't meet these requirements that he signed in this contract, the bank are going to come and take the farm away from him. We don't do this. There is no follow-up from the ministry itself. The ministry has to blame itself, particularly the minister has to blame his organization, and not just himself, but the previous ministers who were there before him. They never did this. If they had done this, we would have not had the situation whereby we have to sit here and say, we need to farm like white farmers. In other words, we just need to farm like successful commercial farmers who have a better understanding of this business. But as I said, it's a lack of knowledge, a lack of education, a lack of information that's supposed to be made available for these people, a lack of mentorship, a mentorship program. I read in South Africa, and this is not through the government, this is actually through farmers themselves. A bunch of commercial white farmers in the area have decided to create a mentorship program where when people receive resettlement land from the government, they take these farmers on board and they teach them. They educate them on how to farm. They mentor them to the point where these guys are able to know the skills and be able to plow them back on their farms. But the biggest problem that you always encounter when it comes to the black community is this. We don't want to share it. Once we obtain the skills, we don't want to share it with each other. We're very difficult to share it with each other. Most occasions we have to go look for it from our counterparts, which are white people, and most of the time they are more willing to help you. Half of the occasions, or even most of the time, that when I started in 2010 started farming in the Witfle area, I tried to reach out to a couple of black farmers to assist me, and most of them were reluctant. Some of them were reluctant because I wasn't from the same tribe. Some of them were reluctant because wasn't from the same tribe, but I didn't speak the same language, and some of them just didn't want. I don't know what's the fear. Is it the fear that if I teach this black fellow, he's going to become better than me and he's going to be my direct competition? That is what we all have to actually strive towards, that we all become direct competitors to our mentors. Then we are really doing something great. But that is what we lack, and that's what you actually find. Last but not least, I also have to say, I have to give another reason why I also don't agree with it, is why I disagree with what he had said, is I always point this out, and I've always pointed this on a lot of statuses that I've written on Facebook. Sorry, not written, but that I've wrote on Facebook. Sorry, that I've wrote on Facebook, where I have said, white commercial farmers, whether he's German or English or Afrikaner or Portuguese, they have their little dislikes for each other. But when it comes to doing business, they will always put those things aside and come together. Well, with us as black people, we take those dislikes we have for each other, where it may be political or tribal or whatever religion we follow or whatever language we speak, we take those things and we make it part of our daily bread. I can give you an example of an uncle of mine applied for a resettlement farm. He got a resettlement farm in the Kalveld area. He applied the legal way. He didn't pay anyone. He applied the legal way, did the paperwork, got the whoever had to sign off and who had to get the stamps, and he sent it in. And by God's grace or by luck, he got the resettlement farm. There was another guy who also had applied for the farm, who actually illegally moved onto the farm. Had his cattle there, had some goats. They were grazing and running on that farm. So when he heard the farm was put up for resettlement, he applied for it. And when he heard the farm, a guy from the Zambezi region had received this resettlement farm, rather than coming to my uncle and sitting down with him and being like, sir, well, at least you are still sorting out your cattle situation, trying to buy animals or whatnot, whatever situation it is you're trying to do. Can I for a time lease or give me a camp so I can keep my animals there? Or at least I'm trying to sort myself out too. But rather than doing that, rather than having the common courtesy of doing that, you know what he did? He ran to LMP when LMP was being developed, to LMP's advocates and lawyers, and went to go tell them, look, I've been applying for resettlement land since 5-6 years ago, and this particular farm that I've been interested in, that I have moved in and I've put my cattle there and I've invested on the infrastructure, has been resettled. And the guy who's resettled to it is a guy from the Zambezi region. I feel that is unfair. Why are they getting land in the Caulfield area? Us who have ancestral land can't what? I think along those lines. And look, I'm not a guy who discriminates against ancestral land calls or whatever. I believe in the simple terms of if you are the best guy for the job, get the job. We do not need to look at your tribe or ancestral lineage or whatever. But that's what I believe. So that's what he did. Rather than having the common courtesy of turning around and saying, look, Mr. So-and-so, you got resettled. While at least you are still trying to sort out your affairs to move here and come bring your animals and now come farm commercially here, can you allow me the time to lease this land from you? And while at least I'm leasing, I will be looking to buy or get something to lease on for the time being. But rather than doing that, he ran to LMP. He ran to LMP and wanted to get LMP to come and march and strike and whatnot. I don't know what happened in that case because I haven't really followed up with my uncle to find out what has happened. Has the guy been evicted or is still there? That's part of the problems. You know, if I have to quote, ending of this video by quoting a Rwandan writer who said, for the nation to survive, the tribes must die. And that is the problem. In this case, such as in my uncle's case, he applied for the farm legally. He didn't do anything illegal. He got the farm. The other gentleman who was illegally settled on that farm, who illegally actually settled himself on the farm, which is a government farm, should have had the common decency to come to my uncle and sit down and say, let's see what plans we can do, what agreement we can come down to. While at least I am also still trying to obtain land or buy land or get resettlement land. Can I keep my cattle here for the time being? Rather than doing that, he turns around and runs to the political party I mentioned and gets their lawyers involved. For me, which was really not the right thing. You should have had the common decency and the right mentality to just come and talk to the new owner and say, look, you got this farm, I applied for it, I didn't get it. Can I keep my animals for here for the time being? Or at least you are still sorting out your affairs and give me enough time so I can also try and apply for resettlement farm or buy a farm or lease land somewhere and move my animals there. But for the time being, can you allow me to do this? And I believe that's what should have happened. So those are my 3 cents and 4 cents. You guys can comment. I'd love to read your comments. I'll respond to them. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on it. Let's engage. Let's have a conversation. And as I said, I made this video. It has nothing to do with tribalism, nothing to do with a hate for any tribe. I'm a Namibian, a peace-loving Namibian. I love every tribe. I respect every culture. I respect every language. I respect every individual. Before I see tribes, I see Namibians. And I love my country.